Well, I think they're very bad for our country. I really think they must hate our country. When the one mentioned that brown people should speak for brown people and Muslim people should speak for Muslim people, and you hear all this, it's not what our country is all about.
Today, the president's attacks on 4 duly elected U.S. congresswomen of color entered its second week. This afternoon, he blasted the lawmakers to the press hours earlier while en route to the Supreme Court to pay his respects to the late Justice John Paul Stevens. Trump had this to say: "The Squad is a very racist group of troublemakers who are young, inexperienced, and not very smart." Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib hit back at the president today.
I wish the president would stop tweeting and actually putting action into everything that he promised. You know, he said he's going to bring steel mills back. He's going to do all of these things. Even if I disagree with the policy, I'd rather him work on specific kinds of actions that help uplift people out of poverty, supporting the working class. Instead, I mean, he attacks working people and tries to distract them from what matters and what's important.
On that, let's welcome our guests. Here with us to talk about it, Jeremy Peters, political reporter for the New York Times, and Juana Summers, national political reporter for the Associated Press. Juana, I want to read you this from a multiple byline story in the Washington Post to begin with. Many in both parties, well acquainted with Trump's history of racially charged rhetoric, were stunned at how far he had gone this time. Republicans were fearful of the potential damage, but reluctant to confront or contradict Trump. The White House and the Trump campaign sought to contain the furor without alienating key supporters. This is the work of very good journalists. We've heard this storyline before. Oh, my God, everyone around the president is horrified. The president continues on his own. Yet I had some very smart people in this studio last week say this felt different. How is this instance different?
Well, I think what's different about this instance is that he's doing this, first of all, at the beginning of what's going to be an incredibly contentious presidential election in which there are 20-some-odd Democrats who are vying to challenge him in November of 2020. And I think that what is frankly really different here is the fact that that leaves an opening where there might actually be a political cost for him. When President Trump says these things, so far there hasn't been a cost, at least that I've seen, to him when he makes these comments that are racist in nature. He hasn't exacted any penalty. In fact, as we all remember, he launched his presidential campaign coming down that escalator, talking about Mexicans as rapists, and yet he won, and people did not defect from him. Now, do I think these comments will show you Republicans in mass exodus moving away from this president? I don't think that is what we'll see. But I've been out on the road talking to voters in some of these places that aren't necessarily deep blue areas, and there is some concern when he says that these young women of color, or these members of Congress, they need to go back. Some people hear something different there that they don't particularly like. Okay,
Jeremy, here is Mr. Miller from this weekend. We'll talk about it on the other side.
I think the term racist, Chris, has become a label that is too often deployed by the left, Democrats in this country, simply to try to silence and punish and suppress people they disagree with, speech that they don't want to hear. The reality is that this president has been a president for all Americans.
So, Jeremy, as you well know, this has been the concurrent effort, this kind of dual, I'm not a racist, but you are, and the moving of the goalpost, the attempt to change the definition of racism.
That's exactly right. And this is something you've heard not just from the White House, but from conservative commentators up and down the board, from Ann Coulter to Sean Hannity. And it is very resonant with a number of Americans. I mean, I think that it is something that works for Trump because these people who make comments like they made to the New York Times over the weekend when we reported this story from Michigan, just trying to see how well these remarks were playing of the president's. And one person referred to these women as colored, and he didn't see that as racist. And so regardless of, the just political incorrectness and the prejudice behind some of these views that many Americans still hold, they don't see it that way. And they see the president, when he is attacked and called a racist, as themselves, because they don't think they're racist and they don't think the president is either. So it has this certain reinforcing effect of all of the anger and the grievance that Trump has brought out in the American people.
Indeed, Juana, something about this story freed up a number of people in our business to go ahead and use the word racist without the usual polite qualifiers that we as classically trained journalists try to tag on. Tonight, I saw Sean Hannity did a numeric count of the number of times the word racist was used to describe the president on this network and CNN as a way of coming back at us.
Yeah, there's been a debate playing out in newsrooms across the country as to how to talk about these terms in a way that gives readers the best information we can. I think that's really at the root of it. And what we've done at the AP is, we updated our style book guidance earlier this year to say that instead of using euphemisms like racially charged in moments like these, when things are seen to be racist, we should call them that. And I think that the best thing that we can do as journalists, at least in my view, is to be as straightforward with our audiences, to reprint the things that we're hearing, especially when it comes from the occupant of the highest office in the land, and to be as accurate as possible in those descriptors. And I know it's something that newsrooms across the country are trying to be really thoughtful about and figure out how to best serve their audiences in that way. And I don't think that there are, frankly, any easy answers here.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.